Good morning, Dog Nation. I'm Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. We're now live across all platforms, Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Twitch and all of that. We've also been doing our First and 15 at DawgNation.com and on the DawgNation app. And if you ever want to join us for that, you can do so each and every morning at 9:45 a.m. And I was going to finish up one quick comment before we started the show today. One of our commenters was mentioning the fan imbalance that you expect to see in Atlanta on Saturday. Far more Georgia fans than Oregon fans for obvious reasons, and I was agreeing with that, and I was saying that one of my favorite things to do on a big tailgate day like this, and I plan on doing this on Saturday, our tailgate's going to be right there in the Home Depot backyard, which is right next to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But one of the things I like to do is, at some point in time during the day, I like to get to higher elevation. I love to get up, and in downtown Atlanta, you have a couple of ways to do that. Around the World Congress Center area, there's some platforms where you can be up, looking down a little bit. I love to kind of look down and see a big sea of tailgaters, especially when it's Georgia fans. I just love the way that looks. And one of the things you see is, the various tents that people have, the TV setups they have, but also the flags that are flying. If I can take a picture of this on Saturday, I'll do it so I can show you what I'm talking about here. But I love that sea of tailgaters. I love the way in which they kind of mark their spot with their flags. And imagine this on Saturday, how many of those national championship flags you're going to see. And we talked about this yesterday. It's a special day for Georgia fans to be watching their team for the first time as reigning national champs. Now, many of us were in Athens for the celebration last winter, and that was all really cool. So we've seen Sanford Stadium with the national championship flag flying over it. But this is our first time to kind of fly our own flags on that. This is our first time to go to a game, many of us wearing that national championship gear. I know a lot of you are looking forward to doing that, and that's going to be a cool thing. So way before we get to kickoff, I think it's going to be just really fun to sort of soak up and soak in all that atmosphere. Last year, I found myself doing that before the Clemson game for a very different reason. A year ago, that was the first time having full crowd for a game in more than a year prior to that. So I think last year was special being around fans because we hadn't done that in a while. This year, to kick this season off, it's once again very special to be around fans, but for a far different reason, because these are the happiest fans you're ever going to see. They are national champs. They are watching their team back in the hunt for a national title again. And of course, none of us know how any of it's going to work out. We can't even fully know how the result on Saturday is going to play out. But we know this: there is plenty of reason for optimism and enthusiasm among Georgia fans, and it will be in no short supply prior to kickoff on Saturday. So we're really excited about all of that, and we're excited about today's show here too. I've got two announcements I'm going to make. Both of these are really fun. One of them I'm going to do right off the top, right after the show begins, and another I'm going to do kind of late in the show today. They're both really fun. We're going to do this, and I think it's going to be a great time. So we'll do that. Connor Riley stops by, having seen some Georgia practice yesterday. We'll get into Monroe Freeling and his commitment announcement for UGA last night. That was big news for the Dogs. We're happy about that. Strong words from Nolan Smith yesterday. We're going to get into a couple of the things that he had to say when he met with reporters. But off the top here, there is something, I think, that some people think is true about Oregon that may not actually be as true anymore as it used to be. Maybe a little bit of a difference in the Ducks you'll see on Saturday compared to maybe the Oregon teams you've kind of thought about in the past. And this matters as you make your evaluation about the game. So what do you say we begin right there with that? We are so happy to have you with us. We are so excited about DawgNation Duck Hunt on Saturday, about Marlowe's on Thursday night with Jake Fromm, and everything else that's going to be happening here on this big game week, including DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. Dial 678-ESOG now for a solution to your foundation and waterproofing problems.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
So we're going to make two announcements in today's show, and one of these I'm going to do almost at the very end here today, but one of these I kind of want to do at the beginning. And this is one of those things where when we can, as they used to say in the old radio days, play the hits. When we can play the hits, that's what we want to do. We want to try to make you as happy as we possibly can. And one of the things that a lot of people have asked is, hey, B.A., you remember last year before you went to Indianapolis, you remember doing that call-in show? I think we're going to kind of use a little bit fancier language here. We're going to call it a live interactive show. We did a live interactive show where folks got to join us on Zoom and talk with me live, and we heard your voice, we showed your face on the screen, we did all that kind of stuff. and we did this prior to the national championship a year ago, and it really was very fun. I think for some folks, they kind of saw some faces with some names they'd heard for a long time, and a lot of people got a chance to share their opinion. After a while, just hearing my point of view maybe gets a little old, a little tiresome. You'd like to hear what some of other folks around Dog Nation sort of think from time to time, and so we did that leading to the national championship, and maybe it worked. Georgia went on to win the game. Well, a lot of you have been saying, BA, do you remember when we did that? Can we please do that again? So I've got some great news. We are going to do that. We're going to do it tonight. So if you don't have plans to do anything else this evening, I hope you'll join us at 7:30 tonight. We're going to be live across all the video platforms. I'm going to be in Athens, and we're going to do an interactive show. That means that if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube or DawgNation.com, somewhere like that, we're going to put the link to participate in the show in the comment section. You can simply click the link, and you can basically be kind of put into the queue. And this is one of those things where, we're going to try to take as many of these as we can. So we'll probably be pretty quick with some of the calls. And if you're waiting, you'll have to wait for us a little bit because we're going to try to get as many of these as we can. But basically, we're just going to allow some Georgia fans to sort of share their thoughts about the upcoming season, their outlook for UGA here this year. And if you pay attention to, say, Dog Nation on Twitter, at Dog Nation on Twitter, we'll also put a link to be a part of the conversation there on that. So tonight, 7:30 p.m., across all the Dog Nation video platforms, we're going to do a live interactive show, me from Athens, inviting you to be on air with us. So stay tuned for more on that. And I think it's going to be a really good time. I know it was prior to the national championship game. I believe it will tonight there as well. What a great time to kind of get some reflections from Georgia fans on what it's been like to be a national champion these last few months and what they think is in store for the Dogs here this upcoming season. We're going to do that tonight, 7:30 p.m. across the entire Dog Nation video platform. We are really looking forward to all of that. All right. With that said, another announcement before we're done here tonight, or today, and that's going to be a fun one too, but I'll wait until the very end to kind of bring that up here today. Let me instead do this. I want to talk about the Oregon Ducks here for a moment. And the more and more I pay attention to a certain kind of conversation happening around Georgia fans about Oregon, the more I realize that there might be a sort of common assumption about Oregon that's somewhat wrong. And I don't mean wrong in terms of, it sort of used to be true, but I don't quite know that it's so much true anymore. And to me, this is totally understandable why this belief would exist, how this kind of idea has kind of grown. Because the fact of the matter is, if you kind of plot Athens, Georgia on a map, or Atlanta, Georgia, where Saturday's game is going to take place, and Eugene, Oregon, you're talking about two extreme ends of the country, far northwest almost as you can go. It's probably 2,500, almost 3,000 miles away from where we're going to be here. So most Georgia fans are probably not experts on Oregon because it's an entirely different league. The two schools have only played once in the past. You got to go back to 1977 for that. And, in the last however many years, there just hasn't been a lot of overlap between what Georgia's been doing and what Oregon's been doing. And I think that's led to a little bit of a incorrect assumption about these Ducks that Georgia's going to see on Saturday. And one of the things that kind of made me think more about this is something that Kirby Smart said yesterday when he was doing his first weekly press conference of the year, getting ready for Oregon. And kind of in his opening statement, one of the things that he alluded to is, although Oregon has a brand new coach, it being his former defensive coordinator, Dan Lanning, and there's some certain mystery involved with a rookie coach coaching his very first game, there are other things about Oregon that can be known for sure because, as Smart said, he knows the former head coach of the Oregon Ducks very, very well. Let me let you hear Kirby on this as a way of kind of setting us up for maybe a vision that some folks have of Oregon that's not quite completely correct. Here's Kirby from yesterday.
Mario Cristobal's a good friend of mine, and he's done a great job recruiting players to Oregon, and Dan has taken those guys and watching what they did in the spring game and knowing the intensity and the organization that Dan has and the leadership, they're going to be a hell of a team. And they've got a lot of good football players on their team.
So Kirby says, hey, I may not know for sure everything that Dan Lanning's going to throw at me because he's never coached a game before. We have to do a certain level of guessing about that. Here's the one thing that Kirby says I can know. I do know the old coach really well. That's Mario Cristobal. I do know what he's all about. I do know what he brings to the table because at one point in time, these were colleagues. Cristobal, former offensive line coach at Alabama before becoming head coach eventually at Oregon. And the understanding that Kirby has of Cristobal in a situation like this is, I think, the same understanding that Georgia fans ought to have about this game on Saturday there as well. Because I think when you close your eyes and picture Oregon, I think you picture the Oregon Ducks team that Chip Kelly used to coach. Remember that team that played Auburn in the national championship at the end of the 2010 season, and that was kind of when a lot of this hurry-up stuff, no-huddle stuff in college was sort of just coming into vogue, and it sort of seemed like Oregon was kind of flying down the field all the time, and they had this, really aggressive, no-huddle attack, a lot of option football, but throwing the football too, and all the stuff that Chip Kelly was doing as an innovative coach at the time kind of came to define Oregon almost as much as all of its fancy uniforms did, and that's kind of what Oregon looked like. And then in 2014, the very first year of the college football playoff, you had Oregon in that college football playoff. And this is back when Marcus Mariota was the quarterback of the Ducks, and Mark Helfrich was the head coach at that point in time. But once again, it was kind of a continuation of what they had been under Chip Kelly. It's sort of a high-powered offense. It was sort of a very fast-moving, kind of a finesse-style team, the way you think of a lot of West Coast football as sort of being, and that's kind of what the Ducks were in the Mariota era and the Helfrich era as head coach. But y'all, a lot of time has changed since then, and while under the Cristobal era prior to Dan Lanning, Oregon was good more often than not, this is not the kind of offensive team that Oregon has been. And I think this matters as you get ready to make your evaluation of what's going to happen on Saturday between these Dogs and these Ducks. In fact, if you want to go back and look, last year, Oregon was just 42nd in the country in points per game scoring. This is not a high-powered offense. And so when you think about what Dan Lanning is inheriting there in Eugene, that's as big a deal of anything, is the fact that even when Justin Herbert was their quarterback, and Herbert now is probably, this is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, right? But when he was in Oregon, they just weren't scoring very many points. They brought in Joe Moorhead. You'll remember Moorhead is the former head coach at Mississippi State, brought to Oregon to try to be the transformational offensive coordinator that kind of Todd Monken was brought to UGA to be. They were hired at a similar time, a sort of a similar timeline of programs that had a lot going for it but didn't quite have the offense going for it, and that's the transformation that Cristobal tried to make there. And for the most part, it kind of just didn't really work. Oregon has just not really been a great offensive team. So if you're expecting one of these teams on Saturday that's going to kind of fly around, playing 100 miles an hour and scoring 50 points, the way that Chip Kelly's teams did, the way that Marcus Mariota was when he was the quarterback there, the way that Helfrich was when he was the head coach, that's kind of not really been what Oregon has been. And that's not to say that the program has had nothing going for it. It just really hasn't had that going for it. So when you think about what Oregon is good at, you think about the kinds of things a team would be good at whose former head coach was a former offensive line coach at Alabama. That's what Cristobal was. So a lot of what Oregon has done well prior to Dan Lanning getting hired is running game, offensive and defensive line, and some defensive stuff there too. That this Oregon team is not exactly what you kind of close your eyes and picture when you think of the Pac-12. They're probably a little tougher, but they're also probably a little less explosive. And for Kirby, he certainly notices a version of that in terms of what Cristobal still has left over from his offensive line recruiting and what Dan Lanning kind of inherits and takes over in his first game at head coach. This is still a program that's pretty deep, pretty seasoned, and expected to be pretty good along the offensive line. A little bit different than the previous picture you would have had about Oregon teams in the past, but probably the accurate definition of Oregon in the present tense, I should say. One more time, here's Kirby Smart on the nature of that Oregon offensive line.
Yeah, I think that we face a really good offensive line day in and day out, and a very experienced one in our own, and that provides a lot of good competition. I think they've got more returning starters, returning snaps than almost anybody in the country on their offensive line. So it certainly is a strength in terms of even what Mario's history is of recruiting offensive linemen. Did a tremendous job putting together depth at that position. So it'll be key that we play well, we play physical. You have to control the line of scrimmage and strike people to be a good football team. They know that. Dan knows that. There's nothing hidden about that. So our defensive line's got to stop the run and be able to control the quarterback, which, depending on which quarterback it is, you got some really good athletes back there.
So the point that I'm making here is the stuff that Kirby's saying right there, I think is really true. If you kind of close your eyes and picture old school Oregon, what it was under Chip Kelly or what it was when Marcus Mariota was quarterback, that was a team that you had to match the explosiveness with. But this Oregon team right now, at least the one that existed prior to Lanning getting here when Mario Cristobal was head coach, that was a team that wanted to be more physical than you. And the challenge for you was to match the physicality they brought to the table, which is obviously an area in which Georgia's pretty comfortable with. And that's clearly one of the ways in which they won the national championship a year ago, was just simply being more physically dominant than the opponents they were playing. And maybe more so than people realize, that's a similar style to what Oregon wants to do on Saturday, that this really will be a little bit more of a kind of a mirror image of Georgia than you might imagine based on what Oregon used to be 15, 20 years ago. That's just not quite been what Oregon's been in the past. But that's not the only way in which maybe some fans have maybe the wrong impression of Oregon. The fact of the matter is, teams like Georgia dominate recruiting so much that you kind of assume that Georgia in a matchup like this has all of the very best players. And if you did assume that, I think you would mostly be correct. I've told you before, I don't think this game on Saturday is going to be all that close, and part of the reason I don't is because on most areas in the field, Oregon doesn't have UGA-level players. Now, coaches and players for UGA can't think that. They can't say that. They've got to be focused. But listen, I'm a blowhard that speaks into a microphone. I can just sort of say whatever I think, and what I think is Oregon's going to be lucky to keep it close to the UGA for 4 quarters and probably won't be lucky enough to be able to do that. But that doesn't mean that Oregon doesn't have UGA-level players in some spots on the field. And one spot on the field in particular where that's definitely true is probably at the inside linebacker spot. Think about, Noah Sewell. Think about Justin Flo. These are names that are very familiar to those of us who follow recruiting very closely. In fact, Kirby said yesterday just how hard it was that Georgia tried to win those recruiting battles, even though it was kind of already deep at the position that they play. This is Kirby once again from yesterday.
They have a tremendously talented inside linebacker room. I mean, both 2 kids we recruited here and tried to get here. And we had some pretty good inside linebackers when they decided to come, and we felt strongly enough they were good enough to come here and play. So they're talented.
So obviously when you talk about Sewell and Flo, those of you who've seen them play, especially in the case of Sewell, you know how true that certainly is. But Flo's no short shrift in that conversation either. So let me see if I can kind of bottom line on this for you. That when you look across the field at Oregon on Saturday, I think in some respects you're going to see a team that kind of reminds you a little bit of Georgia. Oregon does feel really good about its offensive line, and it's going to try to run the ball behind that offensive line. Oregon, I think, feels pretty good about its defense, especially some of its top-end talent there in that linebacker spot, and they're going to try to lean on those playmakers to do as much as possible for them on Saturday. Oregon, I think, maybe doesn't quite know for sure what it has yet at quarterback, and is going to kind of take presumably Bo Nix, the starter, we think he'll start anyway, take him out for a spin and sort of see what he's all about. In so many ways, doesn't that sound a little bit like Georgia? But we believe the difference in the game is ultimately going to be, while Oregon does some things like Georgia does it, Georgia just does it better. And that's the difference we believe in the game on Saturday. But when you show up, don't be surprised when you see a Ducks team that looks a little bit like the way that maybe Georgia has been built throughout the past. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. We're happy to have you with us, whether you join us at 9:45 on our 1st and 15 at DawgNation.com or the DawgNation app. 10 a.m. after that, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. We're on the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, and we're available as a podcast wherever you find them, including the world-famous DawgNation.com. We are just happy to have you here with all of that here today, and a big thanks to our friends at Engineered Solutions of Georgia for making it all possible. When it comes to your home, you want to protect your home in every way imaginable, and that means defending it against foundation and waterproofing issues. And listen, we know the evidence what that looks like. You see those cracks in your wall, sometimes they show up. That's an issue, right? And it's the kind of thing that deep down if you see that little crack thing kind of show up there, you need to do something about that. Well, the simplest thing to do is to give my friends at Engineered Solutions a call. They've got an entire team of engineers on staff, and really nobody else in the market can say that for you in terms of giving you the resources you need to solve your problem. After all, they are a solutions-based company. That's why you should give them a call, 678-ESOG-NOW. That's 678-ESOG now. They're longtime friends of ours here at DawgNation Daily. I am so grateful for those of you who support those that have supported us, and that's certainly what Engineered Solutions of Georgia is. They're also proud partners of UGA there as well. You see them in the stadium on game day, and that's kind of cool, but you hear them here on DawgNation Daily throughout the entire year, and you know how deep our relationship runs with them. And when it comes to waterproofing issues, same kind of thing. You see water where it's not supposed to be, Engineered Solutions of Georgia can tell you how you can fix that. They can get your home protected the way that it needs to be. So call them, 678-ESOG-NOW. That's 678-ESOG-NOW, and that'll get you in touch with our friends at Engineered Solutions of Georgia. All right, before we roll on, let me remind you of this as well. Today is Tuesday. We are now just 2 days away from the big season kickoff event at Marlowe's in Dunwoody on Thursday night. What an amazing experience it's going to be. Jake Fromm is going to be there, you know that. The wonderful lawn out front, weather permitting, we're going to be set up outside there. Our friends from the Finnish Long Drink are going to be on hand. We're going to be having a great time with them. We're going to be talking dogs, interacting with you, having a great time on 6 p.m. on Thursday with Jake Fromm. It's going to be an amazing experience. So many dog fans on hand. I've even been told we may be giving away a few of our DawgNation Duck Hunt t-shirts there that night, which would obviously be a really cool thing. My understanding is we might be doing that there as well, which I'm actually sort of surprised by, but we may be doing some of that. So hope you'll come by and see us, see Jake Fromm with us on Thursday, 6 p.m., Marlowe's in Dunwoody, 1317 Dunwoody Village Parkway. That is going to be a great way to kick off the upcoming season. All right, speaking of kicking off against Oregon, keep the conversation going here now. Before we bring on Connor Riley in a couple of moments for a Kroger Fresh Take with him, let's go around the doghouse here today, presented by Georgia's own credit union. And I want to focus in for a moment on the Georgia defense, and in particular, a guy that every time I hear him speak, I just become more and more enamored with his ability to be a leader, his ability to cast seemingly the perfect vision. A guy that just seems to really get it is outside linebacker Nolan Smith. Now, we know that Smith came back to Georgia as a senior in his final year because he wants to show his pass rushing ability, and he wants to travel the same path of the Dogs this year that the 5 guys off last year's defense did in becoming first-round picks, and I hope Nolan gets a chance to do that. But while he's here working on his craft, while he's here doing what needs to be done to impress those NFL scouts, Georgia gets to take advantage of his leadership and his abilities and kind of the bedrock, I don't know, he's just like a bedrock figure for this Georgia defense here this year. And the words that Smith used yesterday to me are the perfect embodiment of all of that. Being asked about, Nolan, everybody says this Georgia defense is going to drop off in talent. Nolan, everybody says lower your expectations for what Georgia's going to be defensively. Can't be as good this year as it was last year. You'll get no such concession from Nolan Smith on that point. He made that clear yesterday. I love this from Nolan. Take a listen to this.
You can look at it. I've been a Georgia fan all my life, and that's one thing that's been great around here is Georgia defense. So I'm 100% not worried about a drop-off. Again, like Coach Smart said, it's a standard. Just because we had a lot of guys leave last year, it's a standard of Georgia defense, and we play at a high level.
Think about this for a moment. Think about how hard the grind of being a college football player is. Think about the challenge of the sweaty summer workouts or the weightlifting sessions during the season when your body's already tired, you're already sore. In some cases, you're pretty banged up. Think about the level of self-discipline required to push through all of that. Can you imagine that in that sort of dark moment when maybe you're thinking, gosh, what am I doing all this for? For a guy like Nolan to say, I'm doing this for the team I've cheered for my entire life. I mean, don't you just before you get into whatever his prediction is about the Georgia defense here for the season, don't you just love that part of this? Nolan says, I'm playing for the team I've cheered for my entire life. Growing up down there in the Savannah area, this is my team. I'm a dog. I was a dog before I was old enough to be a football player, and now I'm a dog who plays for the Dogs. I mean, doesn't that part of this just work for you, just ring so true for you? And we remember Nolan Smith going into last year's national championship, so articulate about what a title would have meant for those Dogs. It's the kind of understanding you only get if you've been around here for a little while. And Nolan certainly has. So I love the idea of him saying, I've been a Dog fan my whole life. I've seen the Junkyard Dogs. He's not quite old enough to see them, but you know what I'm saying. He just sort of gets the history of all this. For him, it's more like David Pollock and Thomas Davis. Hopefully he's old enough to have, no, I guess, is he old enough to experience them? Only just barely. The point is there is a history and there is a heritage of great Georgia defense. Nolan Smith understands that, and he says, we're a part of that. We don't plan on going anywhere on all of that. I think those are strong words because it's not just an empty prediction. It's a vantage point from which to lead this team, including some young players who, as Kirby Smart has said, hey, that national championship belonged to Jordan Davis. That national championship belonged to Devontae White. It belonged to Nakobe Dean and Lewis Seen and Trayvon Walker. A lot of guys on the field this year, they haven't done anything yet. Well, the players who are stepping into these roles, it sounds like they understand that as much as anybody does. In fact, Nolan says they're kind of ready for their own moment after watching Georgia guys a year ago have that moment before them. Once again, really good stuff from Nolan Smith. Take a listen to this.
No, I wouldn't say it's a different vibe. I say, like Coach Smart said, we're hungry. And I feel like our young guys are hungrier just because a lot of people, doubt them and say that is it going to be a difference, or is it going to be a different change of numbers and stuff like that? And I'm just really excited to see that kickoff in those first couple plays.
Not hungry. You heard that. And like I grew up in Hall County, and we talk the same way. When you're hungry, you really are ready for something. You are really ready for it. And Nolan says, listen, these young players, they're not hungry. They are hungry. And I like that. And I think that's exactly the mindset they should take for the upcoming season. It sounds like they do. And Nolan's leadership sounds like one of the reasons why they are. So if that don't get you ready to play football against Oregon on Saturday, I don't quite know what will. That is strong, strong stuff from Nolan Smith about his own attitude about the defense, what he expects to see from it, because he's been watching Georgia defense his whole life, and what he expects from these young players kind of being asked to be the next Trayvon Walker or the next Nakobe Dean or the next blah, blah, blah. Nolan says they're hungry for their chance to do that very same thing. I love it, man. It's good stuff. And it's Around the Doghouse, presented today by Georgia's own credit union. Now, let me tell you what else is good stuff. How about one of those Visa Signature and Platinum cards from Georgia's own credit union? Because this time of year, you're kind of doing more stuff. You're buying a bunch of stuff. You're buying tickets. You're traveling to games. You're doing all those things. And to have a great card in your pocket like that Visa Signature Platinum card from Georgia's own credit union just makes the entire thing more convenient and the entire opportunity more enjoyable for you, because one of the things you're going to get when you use the Visa Signature or Platinum card from Georgia's own credit union is some flex rewards. It can be used for just about anything. I'm talking about gift cards or cash back, about travel, merchandise, all of that coming your way. Plus, you can also earn up to $150 when you open a new Platinum or Signature card. Now, there are some restrictions that apply, or just kind of find out more details. Check out georgiasown.org for more on that. georgiasown.org. You can learn all of the details about what makes a Visa Signature or Platinum card from our friends at Georgia's Own Credit Union a great option for you as you are busy and going all over the place here this fall. So we've already made one fun announcement on today's show. We told you off the top that tonight, 7:30 p.m., we're going to do a live interactive show from Athens, and I'm really excited about that and excited about having you join us. And we'll give you a link to do that so you can have your voice heard. You can show your face on camera. We'll do some fun stuff with that later on here tonight. Before we're done, we also have another really fun announcement to make, and this one is a long time coming, folks. And so I'm ready to reveal that for you here in just a little bit. But before that, there are other things that must be revealed. What happened yesterday at Georgia practice? Is Eric Gilbert okay? Sounds like he had a little bit of an auto accident. And what else can we expect from Georgia against Oregon on Saturday? Let's do all of that right now. It is a Kroger Fresh Take with Connor Riley here today on DawgNation Daily.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Well, let's say hello to Connor Riley here. Kroger Fresh Take with him today on the program. Happy to have him. We're going to lean on his eyewitness account from Georgia practice yesterday here in a moment to kind of find out about those final preparations before the Dogs take on the Ducks. But, Connor, before we get to that, let me bring you in on a conversation I was having to start today's show, in which a lot of Georgia fans just don't watch a ton of Pac-12 football, and when they think of Oregon, they sort of think of a 10-year ago or 20-year ago version of Oregon that may have been coached by Chip Kelly, was scoring 40-something points a game and running 100 plays per game, or the Marcus Mariota version of Oregon from the 2014 College Football Playoff that, once again, was a pretty high-powered offense. And in a game like that, it's a finesse opponent. You have to match their explosiveness. But the previous Oregon team, coached by Mario Cristobal, was a little bit more SEC style. Pretty good offensive line, pretty good defense, kind of just enough offense, and frankly, in a lot of years, not quite enough. Even when they had a future NFL quarterback like Justin Herbert, this has not really been that high-powered an offense. It is an Oregon team on Saturday that actually looks a little more like Georgia than I think some UGA fans realize. Do you get that same sense when you talk to Dog fans heading into Saturday?
I think I follow maybe perhaps the more online Georgia fans, at least the ones that I interact with, and so they know about Mario Cristobal. They know what he built there. I think they are well aware of the flaws that program had under him. There's no reason they have not made a playoff since 2014 when they had Marcus Mariota there, because I do believe that they have a lot of talent. And I know there are a lot of people that have taken note of, the physicality of being built like an SEC team. Brennan, I have a question for you, and I wrote about this morning.
Sure.
Do you know which team led the country last year in 3 tight end sets?
I do not. Was it Oregon?
No, it was Utah. Do you know the combined score of the two times Oregon and Utah played?
Ooh, this is very good. I know it was a lot to a little. I don't know the exact number, but Utah dragged Oregon. That is very good stat. Connor, give this to us, please.
It is 76-17, the two times that they had met there. There were no flukes. Utah runs a very tight end heavy scheme. I would also note Oregon lost last year to Stanford as well, a team that relies heavily on its tight end usage there as well as big body receivers. So I do think there's maybe perhaps a little bit of a misnomer out there that this Oregon team that was built under Mario Cristobal is sort of this physical slobber knocker that you might see in the SEC on a Saturday. Now, obviously, new staff comes in. Dan Lanning, I think, is going to have a different identity with how this team goes about playing, and what that looks like, we don't know. But I'm very interested in how Oregon and the physicality that they have go about matching up against these Georgia tight ends, where I think Georgia's got a pretty clear advantage there, and this was a big area of weakness last year for the Ducks.
I want to talk to you specifically about Gilbert in a moment, but let me piggyback off this here because I think you're touching on something I think is really important, which is Georgia's not playing a bunch of tight ends because it has no other choice. This is not one of those things where, well, I guess we have to have 11 on the field. Let's just put some tight ends out there. Georgia's doing this because it wants to. And so you want to compare, Oregon getting beaten up by tight end heavy teams like Utah. I think you can also make the comparison with an NFL team that I know you know well, like the New England Patriots. You're going to go back to the years of, like, say, Gronk and, like, Aaron Hernandez. And I realize Hernandez is kind of a loaded name because of the off-field stuff, but as a football player, that was a very potent tight end combo with a guy like Gronk, and New England was better for having had both of them. And it was certainly hell for opposing defenses to try to stop here. And so I think that you're touching on something that's really important, which is that no matter how much we've hyped up the Georgia tight ends and talked about all of this, it is the most potent weapon possible for Georgia in this game on Saturday, I believe.
Yeah, and I think maybe even a more modern example. I know he's not exactly a popular name in these neck of the woods, but you look at the recent success of the San Francisco 49ers, a lot of it has been using George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk. Now, Juszczyk is technically a fullback, but they'll move him around and also get Kittle out there in space. So just because they're not the speed demons at wide receiver, Brock Bowers is probably the second best player on Georgia's team this year behind Jalen Carter at number one. Darnell Washington, I think maybe other than Kenny McIntosh, had as good a camp as anybody out there. Oscar Delp was one of the more impressive freshmen. And then there's Arik Gilbert, sort of this big mystery in terms of what he might be able to bring in terms of, especially with what we saw in the spring game there. So, if you're building a list of Georgia's top 20 players at this point in time, there could very well be 4 tight ends on there. And so when you have those sort of weapons and that sort of advantage, especially when I think you have a creative offensive mind like Todd Monken, his NFL background in terms of having to exploit mismatches out there because the speed difference or the athleticism difference isn't all that great at the NFL level. When you have that kind of athletic disparity and the schematic advantage that I think Todd Monken brings, it only accentuates how difficult these tight ends are to prepare for.
All right, so you had an interesting observation at UGA practice. I want to get to that, and plus the other stuff you saw there as well. But let me kind of lead into this with the Arik Gilbert story, which was, I guess there are reports that he's had an auto accident. We've seen some photos of what appears to be his car, like the Mercedes he was driving. It sounds like he is okay, but you also kind of noticed something yesterday, and you reported on this at DawgNation.com about where he was in the pecking order among these Georgia tight ends during a drill that you saw. So you mind just talking through all of that here for a second?
Yeah, and I want to be sensitive to this because I know obviously Arik is someone who gets a ton of media attention, and almost none of it is his fault other than he was a generational high school prospect. But, the week of the first game, he does have that auto accident, and very fortunately, he is okay. He was at practice yesterday. There were no limitations there. He appears to be fine. When asked about injuries, Kirby Smart said that Georgia was good on that front there. But when I saw him at practice yesterday, maybe it's just in comparison to the guys in that tight end room, Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington is in incredible shape. Oscar Delp is one of the more physically impressive freshmen. He just looked kind of heavy, and that's concerning to me going into the first game of the season. And then even watching that drill a little bit, Todd Hartley and Mike Bobo were both pushing Gilbert to give maximum effort. And it's not that he wasn't. It was just, it seemed predetermined that, hey, we're going to get in this guy's ear on this play to push and try and get the most out of him. And there's obviously a lot of anticipation to see what Gilbert does on Saturday. It's going to be his first game in a Georgia uniform as he was away from the team last year. And I think there are a lot of people that are eager to see what he does, what is his production in this offense. And I've come away from, say, the last 24, 48 hours really wondering how much we're going to see of him and what kind of impact he's going to have because, as you sort of touched on there, for I think the first time all camp, Oscar Delp was ahead of him in drills, and I don't usually put a lot of stock into that. But the week of the game, them making that move, and they had not done that all preseason, that's eyebrow-raising to me. And so I'm very curious to see how much Eric Gilbert plays in this first game of the season, just given sort of all that has transpired in the past 48 hours. And I really do hate that for him because it's only going to lead to more speculation, more things out there, more chatter about him.
So I want to talk through all of this here for a second. As you know, I've been very high on Gilbert this offseason, and I have really kind of been calling for him to have a very big year. And I'm not ever going to sell my Gilbert stock because, like, the one thing that I see in Eric is a guy that just sort of has a nose for the football. In some respects, he reminds me a little bit of George Pickens, and I don't mean personality or anything like that. I mean, I just mean in terms of, like, Pickens just knew how to get the football, and Gilbert just sort of seems to know how to get the football. He caught a lot of balls in high school, and that's not an easy thing to do necessarily, and he caught a ton of balls in high school. G-Day game, he sort of showed it. Freshman year at LSU, he sort of showed it a little bit. So I am never selling all of my Eric Gilbert stock because there is just something to be said for a guy that knows how to put his hands on the football and bring that thing down. Gilbert clearly does. But I have to admit, I've also said a good bit here is there's not room for everybody in this tight end room to have the same meal, right? You know, not everybody's going to eat to an equal measure here this year. And a guy like Darnell Washington has earned so much praise this offseason that I have to take it pretty seriously. And I mean, I would say to a certain extent that's true about Delp there as well for the reasons you just mentioned. But it's really been Washington whose level of, like, whether it be official reports or just whispers that you kind of hear in your little sewing circles, whatever else, people are just kind of talking up Darnell here a little bit right now. And so if Darnell's in line for that kind of year, there's not room for Gilbert to have the kind of year that I thought he was going to have. And so maybe that's what this ends up being is I do truly believe that Brock Bowers is going to have a sensational year, and I think there's room for another Georgia tight end to also have a very good year there as well. But there's probably only room for one other than Bowers. And so if it is Washington, it's probably not going to be Gilbert.
Yeah, and I think your George Pickens one is certainly an interesting one because I do see some parallels there. And, you know, in football, there are just some guys that are just, they can turn it on when the game comes, and they are the best player in the field. I think George Pickens was that way. I think Eric Gilbert is that way a little too, or when the lights are on, you know, he's just able to rise up and elevate there. You look at what he did on G-Day. He was the most physically impressive player out there, just really stunning a number of Georgia defenders who were pretty good last year. And I think the one key difference there is, you know, Georgia didn't have a bunch of other George Pickens in that wide receiver room. Georgia does have a lot of other Eric Gilberts in that tight end room. And I think if you're looking at this, I'm complete agreement with you. You know, and I'm someone who's maybe even been a little bearish on what Brock Bowers might do this year. That guy's a stud. He's going to get his touches. He's going to get his numbers. And I think if you're looking at this from the perspective you bring up there, I think if you can get one of Washington or Gilbert going, you're really happy. And while sure, ideally, you would love it for both of them if that were going to be the case. There's just not going to be enough touches and enough plays run for all of those guys to eat, quote unquote. And so I think if you're a Georgia fan, it's real nice to have two sort of hulks at the tight end position in Washington and Gilbert, but you can only really get one of them going, and it's going to be interesting to see if one of those guys doesn't have the season they think they end up having, how do things sort of turn out for them, and where does the season go from there? Do they buy in and become a special teams contributor and play a role? I don't think Darnell got enough credit last year when it was clear that Brock Bowers had passed him, that he accepted being a role player in part because of the circumstances that he faced last year, and I thought he did an excellent job filling that role. It's going to be interesting to see what that sort of looks like this season, as I think that hierarchy does establish itself at the tight end position.
I got a request earlier since you saw practice yesterday to ask about the offensive line, which is obviously a very good question. So I'm going to, is the Ratledge thing real? Do you think he starts on Saturday? Is he healthy enough to do so? And at left guard, is it Willock? Is it Truss? How do you handicap those guard situations here at the moment?
Tate Ratledge is real, and it's spectacular. I don't want to overhype it there, but I'll use a good Seinfeld line when I can. He's healthy. Like you, I've been maybe cautious in approaching how Ratledge is gonna play. There's no doubt about his talent, in my opinion. If he's healthy enough to go, he will. He had a turf toe injury that was separate from the foot injury, and it sounds like both of those are good to go now. I expect him to start and play every snap at right guard on Saturday. At left guard, I'm leaning towards Xavier Truss starting. but I think both he and Devin Willock are both going to play in that game, and that might be a situation where they take it into the season and sort of see how it goes there and know that they can be flexible, and most importantly, that they have options there because, for as much, questions there have been about this offensive guard position, they have a lot of guys that have a lot of upside, and Georgia is fortunate in that sense where if a guy doesn't necessarily pan out or play the way they think they do, they have other options you can turn to. A classic example in the 2020 season, Owen Condon got the start there that first game against Arkansas. He wasn't very effective. They put Warren McClendon in there, and he has not given up that job since then. So I certainly think that we could see something like that play out where they think a guy has had a better camp and they're awarded to him there. But when the lights come on, if he's not getting it done, they do have other options that they can turn to.
I want to ask you about Stetson Bennett here in a moment. Before that, though, let me remind folks, this is our Kroger Fresh Take with Connor Riley here today. And Kroger, by the way, has got a great hiring event going on right now. Kroger's a great place to work, and you have a great chance to get a really rewarding job experience there with Kroger. They're hosting open interviews today and tomorrow for all positions. So you can stop in from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at 3150 Georgia Highway 34 in Noonan and 564 Crosstown Drive in Peachtree City for some great interview experiences and starting with a dynamic job experience there with our friends at Kroger. So go to jobs.kroger.com for more on that. That's jobs.kroger.com for more on that. Connor, I thought it was interesting yesterday on Stetson Bennett. We're going to talk more about Bennett on this show tomorrow, but the stuff that Kirby said about what he's seen from him in terms of year-over-year growth, but also just in terms of Bennett kind of speaking as the guy with the big spotlight on him yesterday. I thought it was kind of an interesting day for Stetson. What did you just kind of make of the whole sort of experience of a QB1 getting to sort of act like a QB1 yesterday?
So he had a comment there, and we have the whole video up from his press conference there on the DawgNation YouTube page. Make sure to go check that out, including his two songs that he likes to listen to pump himself up before the game. One of them I would not have guessed in 1,000 guesses, but he had a comment yesterday about admitting, hey, I'm a little lucky, to have been to have ascended to the starting position last year. Like, he recognizes all that sort of had to happen for him to get in that spot. And I think that shows a real maturity that a lot of people in life in general, I don't think are willing to look at the role that luck plays so much and then getting to where they do. And for him to recognize that, I think says a lot about his understanding of what, obviously he's been through. I don't think there's ever been a player in college football perhaps criticized on the level that he has been simply because of his scholarship status 6 years ago. And so for him, I think to go out and recognize that, hey, this time last year, I was a third-string quarterback for this team. And now that he's the number one guy, there's maybe a looseness to him that he doesn't feel the pressure. And I do think that if you go back and watch the first half of that Alabama game last year, he was pressing a little bit to start that game in the national title game, but then really, I think, calmed down from there. And look, Stetson's going to go out there and make plays. We talked about this all last season. He is not a game manager. And so if he's able to limit the turnovers like I think he's going to be this year, now that he has that added aspect of maturity, I think you're going to see this offense put up some really big numbers, and Stetson Bennett is going to be a reason why, as opposed to maybe something that holds this offense back like so many people, I think, perhaps ignorantly think.
Connor, that's great stuff. Thanks for being here for a Kroger Fresh Take here today. We'll look forward to reading a lot more from you at DawgNation.com and, of course, seeing you in Atlanta on Saturday there as well, and we'll talk to you then.
Yep, thanks for having me on.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
I think that's interesting from Connor on Stetson Bennett. We're going to get more into the Bennett stuff, I think, tomorrow, because I thought Stetson had kind of a lot of interesting things to say, and obviously Kirby Smart also had some interesting things to say about Bennett, too, and it is a totally different experience for him. And, frankly, it's a little bit of a different experience for UGA in its own right there as well, in that there have been a lot of years where there was some mystery surrounding quarterback going into the start of a year. Actually, there's less of that this year than in most years since Kirby Smart's been head coach at Georgia. And yesterday just sort of felt like that. Bennett just sort of felt like QB1. And I think I almost get the sense that I wasn't there, so I don't know this for sure, but it almost seemed like he was like sort of speaking from the podium yesterday, kind of like what you do with like the NFL starting quarterback, not speaking out in the atrium with everybody else, but kind of speaking from the podium. And he just sort of had that kind of look of, hey, this is our guy at quarterback. We're going to hitch our wagon to him one way or another and see where the season takes us. And that was certainly a very interesting visual put forth yesterday when it comes from Georgia regarding Stetson Bennett. We got some cruise around the SEC news to give you. A big announcement coming up here in a moment there, too. Before that, though, let's go, as we said, cruise around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. Boy, what a great time this is to be heading out on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. Heard from some of you here lately who've got your own cruise vacation coming up, whether it be, sneaking away on an off week for Georgia or just sort of sneaking away sometime this fall. Beautiful time to be out on the seas. And obviously, Royal Caribbean, our recommendation for you when it comes on that. And it's always interesting to me to see, okay, for some people, they like that sort of 3 or 4 night type deal because, for some people, they got a lot going on, right? You got, kids, or you got work responsibilities, things like that. And so a quick getaway makes a lot of sense for you. One of these 3-day sailings, that's a weekend type thing, right? You're back on Monday. You can even go back to work the next day if you want to. Or if you want that 7-night sailing on one of these larger Oasis class ships and take advantage of all the really cool things that are available on board, like a Broadway style show or all the specialty restaurants, obviously all the bars and lounges, the entertainment options, live music. I've said before, one of my favorite things about a Royal Caribbean cruise ship is, at night you can just sort of walk around. Like I think last year when we were on Harmony of the Seas, at night after dinner, we were just kind of walking around, hanging out, enjoying a beverage or two. And we went to like 5 different places in a row. All 5 had live music, and it was just a great, almost little pub crawl for us right there on our own Royal Caribbean cruise ship. So you need to experience this for yourself. It's a great time. Our friend Jessica Slater can help you do that. She knows Royal Caribbean so well. She's worked with Royal Caribbean for a long time, and she can work with you to get you on the perfect Royal Caribbean cruise vacation for yourself and those that you love. So give her a call, 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. You can also check her out online, dreamvacations.com/jslater. That's dreamvacations.com/jslater. And you can get going on a great Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. Speaking of cruising, we'll cruise around the SEC right now with Royal Caribbean. And I saw this was kind of interesting. So the other day, a lot of you are aware of this, Desmond Howard had like the worst college football playoff you've ever seen. It was bizarre. It was awkward. He had Michigan, his alma mater. He had Pitt. He had Texas A&M. And he actually had Texas A&M winning the national championship. And so yesterday, Texas A&M coach Jimbo Fisher was asked about this. And Jimbo kind of jokingly said, I knew I always liked Desmond Howard, which is kind of a throwaway line and not that big of a deal. But I was thinking, though, this is one of the things that I think makes Jimbo a little different than a lot of other SEC coaches, and certainly makes him very different than Kirby Smart. And I don't know if this is good or bad. I just know it's different, right? Because a year ago, remember, Jimbo was asked about, beating Alabama once Nick Saban was gone, and he said, we're going to beat him while he's still here, something along those lines. He said it more colorfully than I just did. Now, he made good on that prediction. They did win head-to-head, but obviously didn't do much with that head-to-head win. But the point is he didn't shy away from bragging a little bit. And in this particular case, I mean, if let's say that David Pollack had picked Georgia to win the national championship, and you'd gone to Kirby in a press conference and say, hey, did you hear David Pollack thinks y'all going to repeat as national champions? Like, Kirby's not going to pay that the time of day. He's going to totally pretend, I didn't hear it, I don't care. We're just worried about trying to beat Oregon. David's got a job doing TV. Like, he's not, like, playing along with that. The fact that Fisher does, I knew I liked Desmond Howard, not really shying away from the fact that he does believe eventually he's going to win a national championship with Texas A&M, it just makes him a little bit different than a lot of other coaches in the SEC. And for a lot of people who believe, Jimbo's got to start winning to kind of keep these Texas A&M fans happy, I don't think Jimbo feels like he's on as hot of a seat, or at least a seat that's getting hotter. I don't think he thinks that way. Otherwise, he might not be kind of playing along with those kind of jokes. Speaking of jokes, Sam Pittman, the Arkansas coach, said something yesterday. Of course, Pittman. So he's talking about like getting ready for Cincinnati. I'm going to read this to you. I think it's really funny. Basically, like comparing how his team matches up with the Bearcats. It's a really good Week 1 game between Arkansas and Cincinnati. And so he says of his team against the Bearcats, he says, I think we've got enough defense and that we can attack whatever we see from them. He says, I think the first couple of series are going to be really important to figure out what they're bringing to the party. He says, some guys bring iced tea to the party and some guys bring liquor. He said, you just got to figure out what they're bringing, which is kind of funny. And it's an example of what I think a lot of us love about Pittman. We love this about him when he was offensive line coach here, and I think we still love this about him as head coach there at Arkansas. Like, he just doesn't take himself too seriously. Like, Pittman's just kind of a dude. I mean that in the most complimentary sense imaginable. Like, he's got that, beautiful lake house, and on that beautiful lake house, he's got like this gigantic statue of a big, razorback, like right there in his backyard. And like, here's the thing about this, and a lot of you that like live around the lake or spend a lot of time on lakes, you kind of know this, is that when rich, famous people have these big lake houses, those big lake houses become a little bit of a target, right? That people, kind of sail by there and they point it out to their friends, and you kind of drive by slow or sail by slowly to see if so-and-so is out there. And a lot of like the rich, famous people that have these houses on lakes, they kind of try to do a little bit not to stick out too much. Not Pittman, though. He's got this big Razorback, like right there in the back. Everybody knows who his house is. He's just kind of a dude that way. He's just sort of comfortable in his own skin. And like these kinds of jokes, once again, you don't hear any other coach in the SEC joking like this in a press conference. And I don't know that it makes Pittman more successful, but I certainly hope he's more successful because of this. Because I think we would all just have a better time sometimes if coaches were a little bit more relaxed. And so if Pittman can win by kind of being relaxed and comfortable in his own skin, I think it would be good for other coaches' demeanor from time to time. So we like Pittman. We like seeing him have fun. And clearly he's got the kind of team at Arkansas right now, which makes having fun a little bit easier because we actually think the Razorbacks are going to be pretty good this year. And very quickly, a couple of other things. Brian Kelly not wanting to name a starting quarterback going into his game Sunday against Florida State. We've already seen the Seminoles play this year. They beat up on Duquesne week 1. By the way, so for those of you not watching on video, we do this thing sometimes. I believe we call this is this called a 2-box when you have like some video playing and you have my face, another box? I have no idea how any of this works. But we do this from time to time. But the way this video was set up for a minute is that Brian Kelly kind of veered behind me. It almost looked like my head was sort of superimposed on his body there for a moment. But nonetheless, the point is that Kelly's not naming his starting quarterback. We think it's going to be Jaden Daniels, but I guess you can sort of count out LSU at a time in which Auburn's named quarterback, they're going TJ Finley. A&M's named quarterback, they're going Haynes King. LSU not naming quarterback right now, but we believe it's probably going to be Jaden Daniels. But Kelly trying to maintain the element of surprise on that, or at least try to keep Garrett Nussmeier from transferring out of the program. But that's kind of the story there on that from Baton Rouge at the moment. Tennessee got some good news. We'll finish with this as a part of our cruising around the SEC. In that Brew McCoy, the transfer from USC, who was at Texas and been about everywhere, it seems like, he has been ruled eligible for the Vols. So Tennessee, already a pretty high-powered passing attack, already a very good wide receiver, gets itself another one in the person of McCoy, or at least a guy that we think has a chance to be pretty good there. So Josh Heupel's already reacted to this. Very excited about getting McCoy added into the mix. So a pretty big name transfer, former 5-star, eligible at Tennessee, and we'll make that cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. Before we get to a fun announcement for us here today, let me also take some time here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia, to turn our attention to last night, where Georgia got itself a very big recruiting win. Now, Monroe Freeling, 4-star offensive lineman, this is like a top 70 recruit in the country, top 10 offensive tackle. This would have been a big deal for UGA no matter what, but it's even bigger than normal because it comes at a very good time in that, Georgia's had a couple of surprising setbacks in recruiting, a couple of decisions that you maybe thought were going to go the way of UGA, just didn't at the very last moment. And so it's kind of created a certain level of restlessness among some fans. And as I've said before, to me, this isn't quite the old what's wrong with UGA recruiting meme that kind of pops up most summers where people kind of laugh at UGA fans that get worried about Georgia recruiting because everything is always fine in the end. I've said before, I think there's a little something about this class that's a little bit different than previous classes have been, and figuring out how Georgia kind of, handles its business in a very new recruiting landscape. That's a conversation probably worth having. It's certainly a story worth following. And so along those lines, getting the Freeling announcement there last night was a nice deal, moving Georgia up from starting the day at number 6 in the composite team ranking from 24/7 Sports. When Freeling announced, that popped Georgia into the 3 spot there on that. Adding to the list of kind of top 100 level recruits that Georgia has here in this cycle. Is that a total of 7? Am I right about that? Maybe I'm off, but I believe it's 7 top 100 recruits that Georgia currently has for its 2023 class. So there's a lot to like about Freeling here. And last night, we covered it for you live on the DawgNation video channels. And from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, we caught up with Jeff Sintel, who kind of went into more detail about why Freeling picked UGA. So here's what Jeff said about Monroe just after he picked the Dogs.
This is a guy that will come in and work. The main thing about why he chose Georgia is he wanted to be developed. And he loved it how he stressed the word loyalty with me. As he said, Stacy Searles recruited him hard, and he was pounding his fist on the table at North Carolina. although maybe he probably didn't have the street cred or the swag at North Carolina to pull in maybe a player of this stature like Monroe Freeling. Well, now when Stacey Searles comes to Georgia, he knows he can get a player like Monroe Freeling, and he continued to pound the table. He continued to say, this is our priority, this is our guy. And really, Monroe told me the reason why he knew is that he'd go on a visit, and when a visit was pretty cool, he knew it would wear off. That visit high we always talk about, he knew that visit high would wear off after like a couple of days or so. But with Georgia, especially with his last visit, he finally decided that, you know what, I like Georgia. I probably love Georgia, and the feeling's not going away. And that's how he knew in his heart of hearts he had to be a Dog.
There is something about that I like hearing in this day and age where so much of what goes on is about NIL, and we understand how real that is, and kind of everything else related to this. It's kind of nice to know that the human connection that takes place during visits still matters. In the case of Monroe Freeling, it seems like that did really matter. Georgia got itself a big win in Freeling. He's a nice addition. Important win for Stacey Searles as he begins his career as Georgia offensive line coach. So a lot to like about Georgia on the recruiting trail from last night, and wanted to share that with you here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. All right, now, before we're wrapping up today's show, want to give you another special announcement. I'm going to try to do my own kind of recruiting reveal here in a moment. We're going to see how awkward this ends up being. But there is one of the things a lot of you have been asking for quite some time. You see on our desk each and every day, we have a mascot here for DawgNation Daily. His name is Eddie. He's Eddie the Blind Squirrel. He celebrates the fact that he's a Gator hater. He believes the good Georgia fan is a hater of those lousy, stinking Gators first and foremost before anything else. Good Georgia fans are Gator haters. Eddie's kind of always reminded us of that for such a long time. That is what Eddie has kind of always been about, and a lot of you have grown to love Eddie over the years. And so a lot of what you've kind of asked from time to time here is, is there some way we can have a little bit of Eddie in our own life? Is there somehow that we can kind of have our own taste of Eddie? We see Eddie on your desk all the time, but we'd like to show folks that we are a Gator hater just as much as Eddie is, and we're going to give you a chance to do that because this is something we've had in the works for quite some time. And if you don't mind, because I'm about to do my own reveal here, let's go back to the other camera shot here for a moment. So watch me try to do my awkward recruiting reveal here as I take my headphones off. I'm going to pull off my pullover, and I'm going to reveal this for everybody to be able to see that we are debuting brand new today for the very first time ever. How about an Eddie t-shirt? Our friends at 7-6 Apparel have made these for us. You see me wearing it right now. Going back to 2018, this is the Eddie t-shirt, the very first one ever. Let me move him out of the way, and I'll move the original Eddie out of the way. You can see this for yourself here a little bit. This is the Eddie t-shirt. It is going to be on sale. You're going to have your chance to buy a t-shirt to show folks that you are a Gator hater just as much as Eddie is. I'm so proud to be wearing this. We've had this in the works for a long time. A lot of you have wanted us to do this. We're going to have this in red, but we're also going to have this. Hold on one second. We're going to have it in gray. I've got a gray version here that if you'd rather have the shirt in gray, you're going to be able to have that. You're going to be able to have it in black there as well. So we're going to have these for sale for you from our friends at 7-6 Apparel. And today, for the very first time, when I post the show at DawgNation.com, you're going to be able to find this link at DawgNation.com in the podcast post, and you can go get your Eddie t-shirt. Eventually, you'll be able to find this everywhere. Our friends at 7-6 Apparel, who are going to be a great part of what we're doing on Saturday for our DawgNation.com tailgate, they're obviously making these for us because we know how great they are when it comes to making these t-shirts, things like that. So the very first ever Eddie t-shirt is now available, celebrating the mascot here for DawgNation Daily. We're really excited about that. We can't wait to show this off for you there at DawgNation.com. So when you see my podcast post pop up at DawgNation.com later on today, you can click that link and you can get in there and get your own Eddie t-shirt. But how about this? How far we've come over the years that Eddie now represented forever on a t-shirt from our good friends at 7-6 Apparel. So really excited about that, and it's just a real thrill to reveal that for you here for today. So I certainly could have given Eddie a golden shoe. I don't know that Eddie's actually ever won a golden shoe. I could have given him one just for now being on a t-shirt for the very first time ever. So that's really pretty fun stuff. But instead, I'm going to give one to our buddy Ben Green, who shared this with me. Obviously, we're getting ready for the duck hunt there on Saturday, and Ben Green has a cool golden shoe moment for as he shares himself kind of getting ready for that too. There you go. DawgNation Duck Hunt. You see the dog character from the Nintendo video game, or at least a reasonable facsimile therein, holding up those ducks. And on Saturday, that's what we believe George is going to be doing there as well. So good stuff from Ben Green on that. We'll make him a golden shoe winner for today. And we'll see all of you, or at least those of you who have the tickets to be there for our DawgNation Duck Hunt tailgate there on Saturday. But if you show up at Marlowe's on Thursday, you might get one of our DawgNation Duck Hunt t-shirts, which is kind of an exciting thing to think about. So congratulations to Ben for being our golden shoe winner today. By the way, speaking of lousy, stinking Gators, about 4,982 days. That is how long it's been since Florida has won a national championship. And our Gator Hater countdown, even 60 days from right now. Georgia beating Florida again. Eddie t-shirts all around as the Dogs do it one more time. Gator Hater countdown. We'll see you tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews cool down. R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised for the price that is promised. And how about the Eddie t-shirts? How excited are we about all of that? Really fun to be able to see that, and good stuff all the way around when it comes to all of that. All right, we'll get your comments here. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. I'll go to DawgNation.com first here or there as well. Cam Hasty says we take either elite or not, serious in all aspects. Yeah, listen, this is one of those things we've just been looking to do this for a long time, right? Because a lot of folks have been asking, hey, we need something for Eddie. We got to have something for Eddie. Well, this is what we have for Eddie, and it's a great rendition of the terrific T-shirt. Just really good stuff. Also, Cam said my hair didn't move at all. I was very nervous about taking off my shirt on camera, which is sort of a strange thing to say. But it's one of those things where, like, I wore a pullover on purpose today so I could reveal this and have the shirt on underneath. But you know what sometimes happens? When you start pulling off the pullover, you start pulling off more things than you want to. And the last thing I want, certainly we wouldn't keep any of our video audience. I didn't want to show any bare skin on here. So, because there are some things in life you can't unsee, and that would definitely be an example of that. So, pretty fun stuff. Let's go over to YouTube here for a moment. We'll take some comments over there as well. We'll come back around to the other comment sections here throughout the day there too. So, hope everybody's having fun, and we certainly are around here. We like having fun and hopefully not taking ourselves too seriously there on all of that. Let's see what else. All right. Lesko says he's got some insider intel. He says, my Bama friend's wife is the kitchen manager for the players' dining hall. So she says, what Lesko says is they've got the championship game on repeat on every TV in the dining hall all year long. Well, guess what? That's also what I watch when I'm eating lunch too. So good for them there on that. But that's actually really funny, Lesko. That's really funny. That's really funny to hear. So a little intel from Lesko on that the Alabama players been watching that game over and over again. Well, guess what? Next year when they're dining and eating their meals, getting ready for the 2023 season, they can watch Georgia beat them in 2022 all over again, every single time, as they make a bunch of excuses for that. Jerry Dogfan says, can you get Mullen in the Eddie costume in Atlanta? Yeah, I'll date myself with this reference, but it can almost be like the old Scooby-Doo cartoon where, like, you just take him, you pull the mask off, and you reveal it to be Dan Mullen. And he says he would have succeeded too if not for us meddling kids. That'd be fantastic. R. Harris says, where can you order the shirt? So for today, when we post the show at DawgNation.com, it says Georgia Football Podcast. It'll be up there this afternoon. There'll be a link inside there to do that. Now, coming soon, you'll be able to find the link everywhere, all across the page. But I actually wasn't supposed to show this today. So I kind of jumped the gun on our product team, I guess you want to call it that, for lack of a better phrase. I kind of jumped the gun on them. I wasn't supposed to show this today. I just was so proud of it that I wanted to. So I'm going to put a link for the shirt in DawgNation.com when I post my show later on. But very, very soon, you're going to be able to see the link for all over the place. For sure. Yeah, so R. Harris, yeah, we answered that. So yeah, check out the post at DawgNation.com. You can be able to see that a little bit later on today. G. Grace Bama Boy said, tell the truth. You started rewatching the national title game in the fourth quarter. I tell you this, I've watched it a million times. I remember, so when we got back from Indianapolis, the game was on Monday. We came back on a Tuesday. So Tuesday night and so Wednesday, that was kind of the day for me where I remember I was very tired. We hadn't slept very much, and I just sort of laid there on the couch and just kind of watched all those videos. Some of it was bootleg, some of it was real, some of it was whatever, but just kind of just consumed all of that. And it was really fun. I mean, I don't mind telling you that, G. Grace. I'd been waiting a long time to experience that, and it was really fun. Really fun. DMart42 says, I've rewatched it about 1 million times. It hasn't gotten old. Yeah. I remember that from our DawgNation cruise, the first annual DawgNation cruise. And we had a national title rewatch party. And, I mean, these are a lot of folks who had seen the title game 1 million times. And they were just watching it all over again as if it was the first time. And you're just reminded how much this means to so many people. You really are. You really are. Let's see the replay here. Let's see. Oh, there you go. So that's me showing off the shirt a little earlier, the black shirt. There you go. Exciting stuff there on that. So that's a lot of fun. Good stuff. Very exciting stuff. Let's go also talking about the Nolan Smith go to sleep celebration after a sack. That's a good one. I do like that from him. That's a very good finishing move. Worm says, I like watching the Georgia national title game to see the Bama defense hands on their hips in the fourth quarter. Yeah, body language can be quite telling. It can be, certainly. DMar42 says the bootleg when they cut in all the heartbreak over the years while the ball is in the air and Ringo comes down with that choked me up. Yeah, that's really well done. I think the guy that did that, his name's Mitchell Smeek, I believe that's his name. That's so well done. And it's the kind of video where you got to be more than just a video person to do that. You have to have a little bit of understanding about the thing you're doing a video for. In other words, if the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup, I couldn't make a video for their championship celebration like that because you just wouldn't have any sense of what it meant. You have to have a certain sense of what it means to Georgia fans to have, some of the cool videos that were out there, like all of that. And it was fun that day to go back and relive all of that. It really was. I like going back and forth between Alabama fans and Georgia fans, and I like all of that. But the honest truth is that, the thing that people make fun of Georgia for, to a certain extent, kind of was true. I'm 40-ish. My entire life has been spent waiting to see Georgia win a national championship. And this past year it happened. Now, I believe it may happen again this year too, but you'll never forget your first. So there you go. Let's see what else. Jack Marino says, I'm always behind on video because I'm at work. He says, I finally just now saw the Eddie shirt. Well, Jack, I'm glad you got a chance to see that. Crow King checking out. Crow King, glad to have you here today. Appreciate that. Andrew Hughes says, read my comment. Let me find it, Andrew. Hold on one second. Andrew says, I really want your autograph on the shirt. Oh, well, that's a really nice thing to say, Andrew. It'd be my pleasure to do that, and my pleasure to just meet you and shake your hand. Certainly. I hope we get a chance to do that. I'll be in Atlanta on Saturday and Athens every single game day. So if you ever get a chance to come by a game, I'd love to be a part of that. And I know the entire DawgNation team would love to meet you there, Andrew. That's an incredibly nice thing to say. Incredibly nice thing to say. So thank you. Marie Just Me says, I've watched the national title game a few times, but can't stop watching the Michigan beatdown. Marie, you're right there with me on that. I'm telling you right now. On the rewatch, I said this before the show began today too, and I've said this 1 million times. On the rewatch queue list, to me, the Orange Bowl ought to be rewatched as much as the national title game is rewatched, because I'm telling you right now, that was a big day for Georgia. It was a playoff win against a Michigan team that thought it was its birthright to come down here and win that game. Remember the post-game show that Jeff and I did from Miami, where all those Michigan fans had booked the stadium? They had booked the stadium. Do you know how much it cost to book Hard Rock Stadium for a New Year's Eve party? But they had DJs. They had all of that. They thought they were going to be partying all night long. That's what they thought they were going to be doing. Georgia ruined their New Year's. And when you're going back and thinking about the really fun moments from the 2021 season, Michigan Orange Bowl ought to be right there with you. It really should. Antonio Jones says Michigan should have been talking all that junk. They should have been. Their offensive line strutting around the field before the game, or run the damn ball, whatever their shirt said, whatever else. I'm telling you, they did not think that was coming their way. Thomas Tyson says, if Mikael Williams, Malachi Starks are who we think they are, we could easily be back in the title game. I think those are freshmen that are going to be heard from. I do. DeMarco Thomas says, which loss do you think Alabama hated worse, the loss to Georgia or the loss to Clemson? I think that when Bama lost to Clemson, it scared them. Saban made a bunch of changes to his coaching staff after that loss. I think the response to losing to Georgia is a little bit different. I think it probably bothered Saban worse, but they're not quite as panicked by it. I mean, I think they're gearing up for one more run under Saban. I think they know one way or another this is sort of that final run, and so they're going to do whatever they can to give Saban the resources he needs for like one more shot at all of this. And, if they kind of fall short again this year, you start to think, well, it's probably about over at that point in time. I don't know that you can, get people to sort of – I just think there's going to be a lot of, well, maybe the moment is just sort of past here. Now, listen, they may win it all this year. That may happen, but nonetheless. Andrew Hughes says we did meet going back to the Notre Dame game out of the media booth. He says, but unfortunately, we hadn't invented the Eddie shirt by then. That's a really good point, Andrew. Notre Dame 2017, which was a very special moment for all of us, but that's kind of pre-Eddie. Hard to believe, but that's before, because obviously the thing that sort of set the stage for Eddie's appearance hadn't occurred yet. That's a good point. Well, maybe this year, Andrew, we can make that happen, because I would love to meet you. I really would. I would love to meet you. Trevor Maffetone says it's wishful thinking that if Bama doesn't win, it's all over. Maybe so, but it's also wishful thinking on the part of some Bama fans to think that's going to last forever. Here's what I'll tell you. Is that if you will listen closely, the stuff that coaches talk about unsolicited, the stuff they bring up on their own, is all the clue that you need to tell you what it is they're worried about. For instance, I'll give you an example as it relates to Georgia. Go back to earlier this summer when Kirby Smart was being interviewed by Cole Kubelik on that radio station in Birmingham prior to the golf tournament. We was there for the region's pro-am. Kirby kind of went on in sort of an unsolicited fashion about how explosive that he thought Georgia was offensively a year ago. That was Kirby really volunteering that information. Now, I happen to think Kirby's probably right about that, but the fact that Kirby spoke so openly about that, I think is a little bit of a clue that, hey, I'm worried that people don't think we were explosive. I'm worried about that, how that impacts me on the recruiting trail. I'm worried about that. That what coaches volunteer on their own is a hint of what it is they're worried about. I think similarly for Nick Saban, the fact that, in talking about getting the raise the other day, now he's the highest paid coach again. But the real message in all that is he's also extended until 2030. He's going to coach until he's 115 years old or whatever. These are the kinds of things that Alabama sort of volunteers. Hey, let's put out a press release about how long Nick Saban's contract extension is going to be, how long he's planning on being here. I think that's a little bit of a signal that he's worried about that. He's worried about the perception that he's a man in his 70s who can't do this forever. And he's worried about the negative recruiting that comes his way from people who say, well, Saban's been the GOAT. We don't deny that. He has been. But, listen, GOATs don't last, right? And what Nick Saban has had is not going to last. At some point in time, whether it ends after the 2022 season or after the 2032 season, it's not going to last forever. So it may be wishful thinking to say, oh, you beat him one more time, you'll never have to beat him again. But it's also wishful thinking for Alabama fans to act like this isn't coming to an end at some point in time, and that some point is certainly sooner rather than later. And watch this. If they don't win the title this year, and they're the favorite to, so maybe they will win it, but if they don't win the title this year, it won't be Georgia fans who will be calling for his job. It will be a growing number of Alabama fans who, don't give him the benefit of the doubt simply because he's won so much. All right, let's take a few more comments here. Also, all right, so I guess we have something here. Is this a new TV commercial? Is that what this is? And Mike Griffith has the TV commercial. What kind of commercial is it for? Right, but I'm just trying to make sure this is not. I'm trying to make sure it's not a competitor to one of our advertisers. But okay, all right, that's fine. All right, so Stetson Bennett's got a new TV commercial. Mike Griff has it. So let's see a new TV commercial from Stetson Bennett shared by our buddy Mike Griff. Let's take a look at this.
Hey, here you go. This place is nice. Excuse me, why is Stetson Bennett actually delivering our mail?
That's who you are.
I deliver. That's what I do. Anyways, tell me about this place. It's new, right?
Yeah, it's called Point Grand. It's a pretty rare find around here. The apartments are great. It's got great amenities.
I get the nickname. It just feels like it's a little on the nose.
And it's mostly young professionals, which is cool.
See? Because he's the mailman.
And it's affordable, so we can actually save some money.
Cool. Thanks for the tour, guys.
Hey, mailman. You gonna deliver some more championships?
So I think that's pretty good. I think he acts pretty well in that. I appreciate Mike Griffith sharing that with us. I think it's kind of cool. Now, my dad also worked for the post office for a long time, so the mailman nickname for Bennett's always meant a lot to me. If you'll notice, it's not quite U.S. Mail official like logo on his gear because that's probably a federal law violation. But it's kind of like a little bit of a knockoff of the actual U.S. Mail logo there on the uniform. But I think that's pretty good. That's a fun thing in kind of this NIL age. You see these guys in their own commercials, and I have no idea where those apartments are, but it's kind of nice to see Bennett getting a chance to do that. I think he acts pretty well. The couple that's in the commercial with him, they definitely act very well on that. So very good actors. So that's pretty well done. I thought at the end, this is going to be kind of a dated reference, but when I don't know why I thought this, but when the guy kind of said, "Hey, mailman," at the end, I thought Stetson was going to do like the Mean Joe Green thing and like sort of toss the mailman jersey his way or something like that. I don't know why I thought that's where that was going, but that's good. He is greater than gaming. Asks, do I ever check the Twitch comments? So I have to be honest about this, and I hate to say this, but it is the truth. I am nothing if not genuine. I don't know where to find the Twitch comments. So I need to do that, but I don't know how to find the Twitch comments. Can you just search this? Let's see if we can do this. Yeah, so I don't know how to find Twitch, which is embarrassing to say, but it is true. So one of you guys who are on Twitch, hit me up, HMU, and let's figure out how to do that. Because I don't know how to do that. Jack Marino says, where can you find the DawgNation guys on a Saturday in Athens on game day? Well, I am always at the UGA bookstore after the game. That's one of the things. We'll be back in our home away from home there this year. Second floor for our post-game show right there at the UGA bookstore, which is right next to the stadium, right next to the Tate Student Center. So you can see us there after the game. And then before the game, I'm just sort of all over the place. So, you know, getting some video, things like that prior to the game. But after the game, always the UGA bookstore. So we can always do that there for that. For sure. And by the way, great job by Mike Griffith and Michael Carvel getting the Stetson Bennett commercial on the air there. That was really fun. Zebulon Owen says to hell with other platforms. Not necessarily. I just don't know how to find Twitch. I'm not hip enough for Twitch. Let me go to Facebook here for a moment, though. All right, on Facebook. And let's see how the folks are doing over there. And we'll take a few minutes worth of comments and we'll get ready to roll. Whoops, that's the wrong video. Hold on. All right. Let us see. Here we go. On Facebook now. By the way, Eddie's shirt looks good here. Daniel Aldrich, thanks for the kind words. He's excited about that. Jesse Dellinger, hoping to see Stetson go over 300 yards. I'd love to see that. Philip Jordan Wells says Twitch is really for game streaming shows more so than video shows. If BA was playing a Call of Duty, so you didn't think I knew what that was, but I do. MW4. What is MW4? I don't know that I know that one. While talking about Jalen Carter, then they get more feedback from Twitch. Yeah, so I've never been much of a video game guy. Like when I was a kid, I was awful at video games, so I kind of stayed away from the most part. And like, now I'll play a little bit of FIFA with my son. We play some Madden. We play some MLB The Show. So I'll do a little bit of that. And I have thought, maybe when the college game comes back, maybe I would stream myself playing that some. Not because I'm good, but because I'm terrible. People would laugh at it, for sure. Let's see what else. Jamie Huff, that's a funny line. Jonathan Aaron said, did you get a peaceful, easy feeling with that win last night for Freeling? Yeah. A little play on words there. Peaceful, freely feeling. Yeah, that's good. That's good, Jonathan. Yeah, I kind of did there for that. I agree. Clarence Dawson says, I barely check the Facebook comments, although I'm checking them right now. Let's see what else. David Johnson says that Sony Michel's looking for a new team. I hate to hear that. It's amazing. You just never know sometimes, I guess, because Sony was invaluable for UGA. David Thatch said, I had to change my thinking that Stetson should have quit while he was on top when I heard of all his NIL deals. No way he could miss that opportunity to get paid this year. I would agree with that, Dave. And the other thing I'd also say, too, is that, like, the thing I've just always been a big believer in is that, if you got a chance to be on a team, like 100 years from now, when you get old and gray, like, that's the thing that you'll just miss almost more than anything else, right? The money that you make is great, but eventually the money gets spent. Like, the stats you kind of put up are great, but eventually somebody else will put up bigger stats. I don't care how good you are. Eventually somebody comes along that makes people sort of forget about you. But it's your own memories that sort of last forever. And for those of us that played in high school, or some of y'all that played in college, or even like your youth league teams, right? It's like, your memories of being a part of those teams are just priceless. And so, the idea that you would walk away from a team voluntarily before you have to. I love the line from, the movie Moneyball, which is about the book Moneyball, but the movie, there's a line where it's like everybody eventually gets tapped on the shoulder and told they can no longer play the kid's game anymore, right? And that's just true, that people are trying to play baseball as long as they can. And for some of us, we're told in high school. For some of us, we're told in college. For some of us, we're told in minor leagues. For some of us, we're told after a major league career. But eventually, we're all told, hey, you can't play anymore. That happens for everybody eventually. Father Time is undefeated. But to think that you would willingly walk away from that prior to that moment, not me. You better believe if I could have, played at some level, I would have wanted to play as long as I possibly could, especially if I was playing as at a high level as Stetson Bennett is. And you say, well, what about missing that sort of perfect moment? Like, I get the idea of that you can never have a better moment than what you had in 2021. I get that. But that's also an example of playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win. And that's not really a great recipe for life. So I understand the point that you're making here. But for me, if I had a chance to be a part of a team, you better believe I'm going to take that opportunity because of how valuable that experience is. Clarence Dawson said I called him out. I didn't call you out. I just wanted you to know that I saw you. Let's see what else. Matt Rugvina says, for the first time in my life, not ready for the season to start. Very content to celebrate the national title a little longer. Well, here's the great news. It's like, I don't think in this particular sense fans are the same as coaches and players. Like, there's no reason why the tailgate on Saturday can't also be a reflection of how great it feels to have won the national championship and how excited you are to start the season. Like, if you're a player or a coach, you kind of only have room for one thought at a time. But those of us who are like media people or fan people or whatever else, we can just have a little bit more range of opinion than that. We can just do more. And so, yeah, you better believe that For as long as Georgia keeps on winning, the national title party is going to sort of keep on going. Now, if Georgia has a bad game or something like that, then at that point in time, it, kind of becomes a little bit of a different type of deal. But on Saturday, I think half the fun is going to be to see people in their national title gear, and half that conversation leading into the Oregon game with these tailgates is going to be people who are happy about what had just recently happened there for UGA. And I think there is room for all of that. Now, the show sort of reflects, what's about to happen, because that's just kind of the way in which shows get programmed. Shows just sort of work better looking ahead as opposed to looking back. But in terms of the conversation we all have as fans when we're together, yeah, you better Marlowe's on Thursday. You better believe a lot of that's going to still be looking back and all that. You better believe that's the case. So I get where you're coming from. David West says, we still get to thump our chest. We are the champions. Oh, you better believe they're going to be chest thumped. There's going to be barking noises made. You better believe that's the case. You better believe that's the case. Travis McCullough says Tiger Woods golf is coming back. Yeah, that'll be pretty fun. Philip Jordan Wells giving you a play on the EA Sports tagline there on that. Let's see what else. We got to get ready to go here in a minute. We are going to sell these Eddie shirts, by the way. Clarence brought that up. So coming soon, you'll be able to find a link right there at the very top of the page at DawgNation.com. Our friends at 7-6 Apparel are helping out with this. But for today, if you want to get one right away, link in the show notes when I post the show at DawgNation.com. So usually around 3 p.m. this pops up. It says Georgia Football Podcast, and that's the show. So a lot of you don't realize this, but if you click into that, that's where the podcast is. And some people listen to it, through that mechanism. Most people don't, but a lot of people do. And so today we'll put a link to the Eddie T-shirt there on that. Barry Watkins excited about Zeus in the NFL, and I am as well. All right, let's do one more trip around the comment sections, and then we're done for today. Properties LLC says, we've got Stetson Bennett overload. Brandon loves Stetson because he sees himself in Bennett. First of all, I actually think that we don't talk about Bennett on the show as much as we should. He's the starting quarterback of the number 3 team in the country. We're going to talk about him on the show tomorrow probably. We didn't mention him really at all today. I asked Connor about him in there at the end. We showed the TV commercial just because Mike had gotten a hold of it. But if anything, I don't bring back the Bennett conversation maybe as much as you might think you would for a quarterback of a team like Georgia, just simply because, just so much of the commentary around it can get kind of grotesque from time to time. As far as me seeing myself in Bennett, I don't know if that's the case. I was never anywhere close to as good an athlete as Stetson Bennett is, so I don't know that I relate to him all that well really at all. Ohio Dog says Solomon Kinley also released today. So we're going to see a lot of this, but we'll also see some of these guys. I don't know in Kinley's case what the future holds, but when you kind of get down to that 53 cut down day, you also see some of these guys find new homes on new teams because obviously there are some teams whose 53s aren't quite as well represented. James Lawson says he'd like to bring his parents to Marlowe's. Yes, you can do that, and we'll make sure they have a seat. So it's kind of a first come, first serve on the seating thing on that, but we'll make sure they're taken care of. James, for you especially. Rome Dog, I have lost weight. Thanks for noticing that. Appreciate that. Brian Jones also letting us know that Terry Godwin and Javon Wims have been cut. So they're looking for new homes there as well. Dan weighs in to say, good for Stetson, and I'm glad he's our quarterback as long as we're winning, but can't wait for the season to start so we can stop hearing this Stetson Bennett is disrespectful narrative that only the Georgia media cares about. Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I mean, listen, when it comes to the overall Bennett conversation, I think there's some room for some nuance there. I've told you that before. I do. Johnny Surf Dog also reminding you that Jake Fromm, who we'll see on Thursday, is a true Gator slayer, 3-0 against the Gators during his Georgia career, and you love the thought of that. Final comments at YouTube, and then we're done. Chase White says I flaked on him. Chase, I have been running around 100 miles an hour. I know you tweeted at me, and I apologize. We've had a crazy last day or so here, but I will be getting to you. I apologize for that. I'm doing everything I can just to be sitting here in this chair right now, which everybody's busy. I understand that, but it's been crazy. Let's see what else. Cousin Eddie says he wants one of the Eddie T-shirts. That'd be a perfect marriage between username and T-shirt there as well. So that's awesome. Good stuff. All right, we got to go for now. Appreciate it. Really good stuff. Andrew Hughes says, who's the worst team in the SEC? Why is it Florida? Listen, I'm right there with you on that. I love the thought of that for sure. All right, we got to go. Appreciate you being here. Y'all check out the Atlanta Journal-Constitution online, ajc.com. You can follow Braves getting back in action tonight. You can check that out there. High school football heading towards Friday. Always plenty of great high school coverage. Falcons trying to do their part to get down to the 53-man roster, so you can read that there. Although I said before, not all these 53-man rosters created equally. We'll see you tonight for a call-in show. You want to join us there for that. Chip Tower's got a good piece up. You can read that. And, by the way, some crazy traffic thing in 285 yesterday, too, which is wild. So you want the aftermath of that. You can get that online, ajc.com as well. Our friends at R.S. Andrews, including our buddy Dari Payro, who returns this week. We're actually going to do a brand new time on Friday night this year for the Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews. So we'll do some picks with Dari on Friday. And between now and then, you can check out R.S. Andrews for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs, including getting your AC unit tuned back up to factory fresh specs. It only costs $99. Somebody told you need a new AC unit. R.S. Andrews may be able to show you how you can get some more life out of that old unit before they ever talk to you about getting a new one. So rsandrews.com for more on that. And we will see you tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. We'll look forward to talking to you then.